to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome back. It is the coldest part of the year here. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Morganoni. I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
It is not warm outside. I will confirm. We had...
Speak for yourself.
We had 14 inches of snow.
A lot of the country.
Over here. Yeah, but in my
here
world...
in sunny
Jason,
Arizona.
In my world.
Yeah.
Cold.
It's a little... I'm wearing pants.
Sweatshirt?
Not shorts. No.
Okay.
And honestly, I'm in shorts today. But I could be comfortable in pants is my point.
You're just in a different planet in terms of what the East Coast just experienced. And I know I hate talking weather usually, but it really is that cold where it affects my day-to-day life. But I know it doesn't really affect you at all, Jason. At all right now.
Yeah, over here in our little warm bubble. But no, I know how brutal it was between flights and shipments and electricity and yeah, I mean that was a bad weather storm.
Betz has a whole different experience getting to explain snow to his kids, and they get to play outside. There's parts of the country where it's just sad, cold. It's the doldrums. It's the worst. But I do like where we're at in terms of turning the page for the season. I feel like this episode in particular today will not only turn the page for our company of where we're going in prospecting season, but I feel like we get to be really honest. I was sharing this with Jason yesterday and even today, that I think it's kind of refreshing on a Dynasty podcast to say right now that we don't know everything about these prospects.
Not even close.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, we care deeply about the NFL and about fantasy football and all of that, and that kind of takes up our time through the season of the NFL. So it's this time of year where we are really pivoting, and this is a fun, exciting time of year. But yeah, we don't come into this time, at least I know I don't. You guys probably are a little bit ahead of me. I don't watch college football through the year. I think there are some ways in which that could be considered a disadvantage. I think there are a lot of ways where I think it's a big advantage because I watch year after year after year these people who they've known this name for so many years, and he was supposed to be great, and then he kind of tapered off and wasn't. And those guys don't usually hit because those are frequent. And so when I come to the table, it's like, okay, what is the current as of we're recording this January 27th. As of that time of the year, what do the big boards say? What are the consensus mock drafts and, deeper multi-round mock drafts? What are they saying? What are the combines saying? The Senior Bowl. We're at the time of year now where it's like the truth is a little bit clearer, and you start from that. And I don't feel like that's a disadvantage. I feel like it's an advantage sometimes.
I think I agree with that in some aspects. And we were kind of talking before we started recording too, like these GMs and these front offices and staffs, they've all got their guys. They've all got their scouting team that have eyes on these players throughout the season. But if we're being totally honest, like the NFL GMs and coaches, head coaches, offensive coordinators, some of these guys that are involved in the decision-making process when we get to round 1, round 2 of the NFL draft that we generally care about the most, these guys are like just starting on this process now too, right? Because they're so deep into what's happening in the NFL during the regular season. So it is kind of a what have you done for me lately type of thing where we've referenced this on the show before. It's like some of this mock draft data and some of these kind of projections on this guy might go in this round or that round from like July just look completely, you look back at them and you laugh because they're so outdated and so inaccurate. So much changes from the start of the regular season for college to college football playoff to now. We're going to get the combine as another data point, which has its own medical checks, which is kind of important for some of the players in this class. Obviously the athletic testing, and then of course the NFL draft. So yes, it looks like it's solidified right now, but I mean, things change so much.
Yeah, it's okay to be in process with a player that maybe you know the name, maybe you know part of the production profile, maybe even know like, hey, I've watched some games of this player. It's okay to be able to say, I don't have everything figured out. I remember at this point in the process, we'll talk about the quarterbacks, but it was Kim Ward, Shadur Sanders back and forth in January, who was going to be the number 1 overall pick. And then some of the other quarterbacks, like Jackson Dart was not even seen as a consensus top 50 pick. Tyler Shuck wasn't even the top 100 at this point in terms of just where he was being mocked. So things change. We're willing to adapt with that and kind of set the table. So this episode will be a 2026 preview of the prospects. But before we did that, I did want to start us off with a little bit of a game.
I want to play a game.
I mean, the goal of every game that you play on a Fantasy Footballers podcast is I'm going to sound kind of smart, and you guys might feel dumb.
Correct.
We'll see about that. My secret is I'm always feeling dumb. So you can't get me at all, Kyle.
That is a good superpower to be able to just be like, you can't do anything to me. I already know what I feel. So this is rookie draft pick trivia. So thinking of Dynasty rookie drafts, and you can play along if you're listening. I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I want to see which the two of you are closer. So the first question here is in 2017, so a while back. Christian McCaffrey was taken 8th overall by Carolina, but he was not the 101 in rookie drafts. Who was it that year?
I think I know.
Oh, man, there was a couple guys. I want to say it was Leonard Fournette.
That was going to be my guess as well, Uncle Len, because he went 4th
He went ahead of
to
him.
the Jaguars, yeah.
He went 4th overall, and it was Leonard Fournette who was the 101 in rookie drafts, and for a couple years, it was pretty nice.
Yeah. Once he morphed into a pass-catching back for some reason, such a weird career for Leonard Fournette. He was really good for fantasy, yet never lived up to the expectations. It was like he was supposed to be something. He was supposed to be Adrian Peterson, and then he wasn't, so he was disappointing. So then he was like, ew, Leonard Fournette, and then it was like, oh wait, no, he's catching 70 passes. What? He's really good for fantasy.
Dude, the Uncle Len trajectory was crazy because you're right. He came out of the gate hot, was obviously a very hot dynasty name. Then you're right. There was this negative connotation where it was I don't really want him. And then the Brady years in Tampa when he was still there, when he caught all those passes. Yeah, he was a key piece of that team. It's so wild to think about those guys being selected just a couple picks apart in the same draft. But Christian McCaffrey had an unbelievable fantasy season this year. Still looks like he could do it for another couple years. Whereas, I feel like Leonard Fournette has been retired for a decade. Doesn't it feel like that?
Yes.
Even though obviously it's only been a few
that.
years. But yeah, they took a different path to where they are today.
That draft, if you think about the running backs and the life that...
Wasn't there a third top 10 running back drafted that year?
I don't...
Or am I... There was another great running back that year.
Okay, Kamara was in that draft. That was in the 3rd round.
Oh, that is who I'm thinking of.
Mixon was also drafted in the 2nd round. Kareem Hunt was in that draft. Yeah. So that group, we've lived off that in fantasy for years, and you kind of see them aging out really over the last couple of years, CMC notwithstanding. But it's cool to think of in your rookie draft, if you just took running back, you actually did pretty well in that early class.
Yeah, that year.
With that group.
For sure.
All right, question number 2. In 2018, that was the famed class where we had 5 quarterbacks drafted in the 1st round. So Baker Mayfield went 1st overall. Darnold went 3rd overall to the Jets. Josh Allen, 7th overall. Jason knows who went 10th overall to his Cardinals.
Josh Rosen, baby. Lamar Jackson. Was he 32? They traded up into the 1st?
The very end of that draft. My question is, what was the order in rookie drafts? So I just gave you the order in the NFL draft. Baker, Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson. What was the order in rookie drafts that year?
Oh,
This
man.
is going to look
that's
stupid.
a big order. I feel like Baker would have gone 1 because he was a little bit mobile.
Baker went 1.
I want to say Darnold probably went 2 because at that point we loved him. Obviously, Josh Allen being so mobile for fantasy purposes, even though we all universally hated Josh Allen. Man, I'm going to say Baker, Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Lamar.
I'm going to say Baker, Darnold, Rosen, then Allen, then Lamar. Because I remember when Allen came out, a lot of people made fun of the Bills. They were like, oh, played at Wyoming. He has no accuracy. This is going to be a bust. And then Lamar, this sounds so stupid in hindsight, but there was real NFL analysts being like, is he a quarterback? Maybe he's a running back. Who knows? He could be either. And so there was the whole stink on Lamar when he came out.
Oh, he was supposed to change to running back. Like, he can't be a quarterback.
So I feel like
the famous, like, not bad for a running back.
Yeah, I feel like Allen and Lamar were last.
It was Baker, Darnold, Lamar actually went third. Yes.
Oh.
Rosen, and then Allen went last.
We are so smart.
Yes. I mean, a lot of that was he can't complete passes. This is what's going to turn into the NFL, his stuff from Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting stuff. All right, number 3 here. I want you to guess where Amon-Ra St. Brown went in his rookie drafts. That was in 2021. So he was a 4th-round pick by the Lions.
In the NFL, yeah.
So where did he go in rookie drafts?
One quarterback
drafts.
I'm going to guess the 205.
I'm going to say later than that. I'm going to say 211.
Okay, so you're close. It was 207. He was the
Okay, we split the difference.
He was the wide receiver 8 behind names like Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. We all knew that. But then there were some other, heavy hitters that went before him. My boy Terrence Marshall Jr., of course.
Oh, lockjaw.
Elijah Moore, who has probably lived 38 Dynasty lives, and you were probably shocked to see him on your screen running routes for the Broncos in the snow. You're like, oh, that's Elijah Moore. What's he doing out there? Rondale Moore, and then Diami Brown actually went ahead of him as well. So wild to see Amon-Ra. All right, a couple more questions. Where did Jackson Dart? Okay. The hotness right now. Where did he go last year in one quarterback drafts?
Man, he had to have been a 3rd rounder. Jackson Dart, mobile. Where was he drafted? I know it was last year. Was that
end of the 1st round, 25th overall?
They traded back up to get him.
Probably 2nd round. Then I'm gonna say 207.
I was gonna say 205 again. Same answer as before.
It was the 211. So a little bit later. It was after Mason Taylor. It was after running backs like Jaden Blue and Ollie Gordon. So we kind of know how it goes in one quarterback leagues where they kind of get pushed down. Every team needs running backs, but it's interesting to see Jackson Dart with the rushing upside. Something we did talk about a lot. Go that late in the 2nd round. All right, one more. And this one's just plain fun. In 2023, we had a bunch of late round rookie hits at wide receiver, including Puka Nacua, who basically went undrafted.
Yeah, he was a waiver wire in both of the Dynasty leagues.
And somebody out there's like, I got him in the 3rd round or the 4th round. Basically, that's where it was. I want you to put these wide receivers from that draft in order of where they went in rookie drafts. Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Mingo, and Parker Washington. So these are in the doc if you need to see them again. Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Mingo, and Parker Washington, who...
Mingo had to be first.
Okay.
So Mingo is definitely...
He definitely was first. He went
at
to the top of the 2nd round in rookie draft.
I was going to say, he was like the Keon Coleman range from previous seasons, right? Same area of the draft?
I feel like we need to rename that for those guys, because that's what it is every year. It's like, oh, you were drafted in the 2nd round. I guess I have to take you here. So yes, Mingo went first.
I'll say Mingo, Washington, Rice, Nacua.
I think that's the exact order I would go. I remember in my personal rankings, I was a little higher on Rice. I think I might have had Rice ahead of both of those guys, but I think ADP-wise, Rice would have been 3rd and Puka definitely was 4th.
Okay, it was Mingo, Rice, who went...
Oh, all right.
And Jason, I remember that conversation very vividly, that you were pounding the table like, I really like this Rashee Rice guy. I was like, man... My guy said, and then my conversation was, I got a guy who says he's got some off the field stuff. Puka, and
it looks like we were both
yes,
right.
we were both dead on. That's usually what happens in these conversations, right? Is like you look back and you're like, well, I guess we're all kind of right and wrong. But it was Mingo, Rice, Puka, and then Parker Washington actually went 4th among that group.
Oh, really? Okay.
So interesting to think about the trajectories of all those players. Even Rice right now, where it's like I don't really know where he fits. He's kind of in this no man land of, is he a gadget player? Is he a wide receiver 1? Is he going to be on this team? Is he going to keep facing legal issues? All those things. And then, of course, Puka. Would you say as of right now, so Tyreek's probably the greatest dynasty steal of all time. Just off where.
He was a waiver wire in all leagues. He was not drafted. This was a 5th round wide receiver who was basically used as a running back in college, and you didn't expect much.
Would you say that
him and Puka?
Would you say Puka has been a greater value to your team? It's only 3 years in.
It's so hard to talk about because it's so recent, right? Like the Puka, we're in it right now. And
it's great.
And Tyreek, obviously, what we last saw was a gruesome injury.
I don't think you can say Puka is where Tyreek was. Tyreek, when you got him off of waivers, you got a guy who was, I mean, I'm looking at his career fantasy finishes. He finished as the wide receiver 4, the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2, the wide receiver 6, the wide receiver 2, the wide receiver 2. That's one of the best wide receivers of all time fantasy-wise. I mean, you've got to be Antonio Brown to be, having that many elite yearly finishes. Puka could get there. Puka's on his way, but you pretty much can't get better than Tyreek Hill. One of the best fantasy assets of all time went undrafted in all of our genius rookie drafts.
And what's crazy about Tyreek is his best years probably were actually with the Dolphins. Like, it wasn't even those Chiefs years. It actually got better, where Puka the last 2 years in terms of yards per out run has put up back-to-back maybe the greatest back-to-back seasons of all time. Like, if you stack them up over the last 20 years, Puka has the 3rd highest and the 5th highest yards per out run seasons over the last 20 years. So pretty crazy. And you can look back at Puka's profile. Remember us behind the scenes looking at him. It's like, man, he was hurt. He changed teams. His yards per out run looks good. I don't know what to do with this player. And obviously the NFL did not know what to do with this player except for Sean McVay and all their, interviews afterwards saying like, we want this player. But it's in the prospecting season. You're going to find guys like that where you're like, I don't really know what to do with them. Don't just assume they're all going to be Puka Nacua or Tyreek Hill. In fact, it's probably very few that are ever going to do that. So, Betz, any last thoughts?
Well, I just think this exercise was really valuable, to make people realize how bad all of us collectively as a dynasty community are at this, right? And the NFL, how bad they are at this. So I think I said this last year, and I'll say it again. Like, if you have a different take than us, your league mates, the market from an ADP standpoint, like, do not be afraid to exercise that take if you have it and call your shot, because you get stuff wrong all the time, but there's like this psychological barrier where it's like, well, he goes at the 107, so I almost feel like I kind of have to take him. If he's not a guy that you believe in, if you didn't believe in Matthew Golden last year, pass on him, right? Like, take the guys that you believe in. If it's a spot or two ahead of ADP, who cares in rookie drafts?
People were mocked or criticized when they said that Neighbors was better than Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
And they were near each other. It wasn't outlandish. They were in the same tier. But still, it was like, well, he's clearly not better than the Hall of Famer's son. And I mean, obviously the injury might derail things, and in the future, maybe Marv is still better than Neighbors, but that doesn't look like a even incorrect thing to say anymore, let alone outlandish. So I think that's good. But I would also say, I don't want to say that the community as a whole, that we as a show, that the GMs and scouts and people that do this, that they don't know anything, because I do believe that the majority, what we've done in this little list here is we've talked about the outliers, right? Josh Allen is an outlier. Puka Nacua and Tyreek Hill were outliers. You look at last year, and yes, you're right. The Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck, those guys came from, this time of year from nowhere to fantasy relevance. RJ Harvey last year, this time of year to fantasy relevance. But this time of year last year, it was like the top backs were Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton and Travion. The top wide receivers were Travis Hunter, if he was a wide receiver at the time, Tedero McMillan, Golden, Egbuka, Burden. That's the order they went in the NFL draft. So, the lay of the land episode we're giving today, it's probably mostly accurate. But it is certainly not going to get everything right.
Correct.
It's impossible.
Yeah, and I like how you guys point out there's nuance in all of this. And so we're trying not to have our hand just so heavy that this is exactly how it's going to be, while also not swinging all the way to the other side and be like, we don't know anything, we're all screwed, and we're all going to get it wrong because there's going to be outliers in the entire process. Look at the NFL this year. The matchup in the Super Bowl is two teams that, if you would have bet before the season, would have been the highest combined odds ever for an NFL Super Bowl. So,
it wasn't just the Super Bowl. I saw this thread of the final four teams to make it. If you include the Broncos and the Rams, it was like those were all extreme long shots, like 24-1 to make the Super Bowl. And those were the final four, options those were the only teams that could have gotten there. Wild year of parity in the NFL this year when you have Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow not even dancing in the playoffs.
It was refreshing for, thinking about what playoffs have been the last 10, 15 years, Brady or Mahomes is what it's felt like most of the time. It was refreshing to kind of see some different names pop up. But let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about these prospects. All right, it's that time of the year where we are going to press reset. We're going to look forward to a fresh crop of rookies, so let's get into it.
Hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL.
So as Jason mentioned, the way that we go about it with the fantasy footballers is we first look at mock draft data, which is aggregated from tons of different places. We use NFL mock draft database a lot for a lot of our research, behind the scenes stuff. And we start from there saying, who are the names that we need to pay attention to? There are names that you've heard about for years that maybe, if you're watching college football, you know them. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to say this is a starting point, but not an end point. And then we also get to look back at the last couple of drafts and say, is this a offensive heavy draft? Are there players that are showing up in the first, second round? And can we get excited? So just to give you some context, in 2024, it was a couple years ago, there were 20 offensive skill position players drafted in the first 2 rounds of the draft. So first 2 rounds.
Meaning there were 20 fantasy players.
Yeah. Quarterback, running back,
in the first
wide
round.
receiver, tight end. Last year, there's 21. Right now, there are 16 currently being mocked and just 7 in the first round. So
7 in the first round. Disgusting.
We're here to get people excited. And if you're listening at this point of the year, you already are excited. But
for 2028.
It's tough to be able to paint like a really, really big picture and say this is what it's going to look like. There will be names you fall in love with, right? There will be running backs that right now are being mocked, I don't know, 3rd round, 4th round. They're going to end up being in the 2nd. You'll be like, I knew it. This is the guy I really, really liked. And I even wrote a message to myself the other day. I said, I bet I'm going to get something from Mike Wright that says, I love this player. So.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's my new favorite game.
Mike and I, we always fall in love with a running back or two and hate a wide receiver or two. And I feel like more often than not, those are right. Now, every now and then you get a Caleb Johnson. I apologize. The Steelers in the draft season liked what they saw, same as I did, but apparently not once he was on the roster.
He's not dead. He's not dead.
I know. Never wrong, just early. Just wait another year. Maybe he'll prove me right. But I feel like Mike and I are both very similar that way, that we can fall in love with a wide receiver and fall in love with a running back that we see and we're like, this guy's better than people are saying. Like last year, Cam Scattaboo we're like, what are people doing here? And then like last year, we hated Matthew Golden. I couldn't believe he was a 1st round wide receiver, and those feel good.
I was looking back at even further than the last couple of years, and pretty much there should be about 20 players in the first 2 rounds that are offensive skill position players. And right now it's not looking as good. So if I were to give like right now advice for people, I'd say if you want to move up in the 1st round, you can do it. There will be names that emerge in the late 1st round of your rookie drafts, the 2nd round, that become valuable as time goes on. We talk about how your picks become more valuable as we get to April. But if you're trying to weigh, I have the 109, what should I do with this pick? Your 109 is not as valuable as it was a year or two ago. I do like some of the wide receivers, which we'll talk about, that I think there's a good mix of 5 to 6 wide receivers. But I also feel like that's going to be the first, 6 or so picks. It's going to be Jeremiah Love and then just a run on wide receivers.
That's exactly how this year's draft is gonna play out. If you're in a non-superflex league, obviously in a superflex, you're gonna have the debate as to where Mendoza, or if another first-round quarterback gets picked, where do you take him over Love, or probably not. But yeah, it's going to be those first-round wide receivers, and there's going to be 4 to 6 first-round wide receivers this year. That's where this year's prize is. Last year, the prize was running backs. You had a deep, heavy top-end crew, and while I think they disappointed on a fantasy finish perspective, it wasn't like you had a bunch of guys crack the top 12 at the position this year. They certainly didn't disappoint. I mean, Quinshon Judkins looked great at times, got injured, unfortunately. Cam Scadaboo looked like, he is the dude. Omarion Hampton looked great, injured. Travion Henderson he was doing his best Caleb Johnson impersonation the first half of the year, but then once the opportunity came, he was like, that guy's awesome. So, and then Genty was Genty. So I think that it was still not a disappointing year for those rookies, even though from a redraft first-year fantasy points perspective, it didn't wow you. But I have no doubt that Dynasty startup rankings, those rookies from last year are going to be great, and that's hopefully what we get this year with the top end of wide receivers. And you were talking, Kyle, just a second ago about you don't mind trading up to the first half of the draft. What I think you should really do this year is target March. Target a couple weeks into March, because if you are on it right now, from now till then, you're listening to these podcasts, we're scouting guys, there will become a clear tier break picture before April. And then April is when the prices are going to start skyrocketing, what it's going to cost you to get up there. But if you go there's 6 guys I really like, I got to get one of those top 6 picks in March, you could probably get it. In April, it's going to cost you a lot more. And then obviously after the draft, there will be very definitive tier breaks as to and it could change. That's where it's tough if you do the trade before the NFL draft and you're like, I love 6 guys, and then one of them tumbles. Okay, you could get burned, but usually it's the opposite. Usually after the NFL draft, there's a guy that sneaks in, and now the tier break gets one bigger.
Let's start off talking about quarterback. We mentioned last week, we had a little discussion at the beginning about Fernando Mendoza, who before the season was seen as a top 10 pick, and he slowly moved to consensus number 1 overall pick. He's at minus 8,000 right now on DraftKings to go number 1. But
he's got a Raiders tattoo.
Basically, he needs to.
I mean, he should.
The
only way he is not a Raider, the only way that I could see he's not drafted to the Raiders at 101 is he's a Raven, and there's a Lamar Jackson trade for the pick or something. He's the first pick in the NFL draft.
Yes. The question is about the rest of the class, which we'll have a whole episode where we kind of go through their attributes. We talk about scouting, the film, everything else. But behind him, Alabama's Ty Simpson kind of is fortunate that he is the one in this class that is kind of the incumbent number 2 as of mock drafts and everything else, but he only has 15 starts to his career. Betz, we've talked about this the last couple of years. We've trended towards understanding that experience really matters at the quarterback position. We're used to think if you're young and you have the measurables, sweet, you're going to just be awesome. But it's actually been the opposite over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of the group that he falls into with just this recent trend of guys that declare without a lot of experience in college, the hit rate there is pretty abysmal, if I'm being honest. Now, from his standpoint, from you look around the room and you're like, there's no quarterbacks in this class. Maybe I should just declare. For his agent, family decisions, from a business standpoint, this is a smart decision, I think, for Ty Simpson, because it's a very, very weak quarterback class. Mendoza's kind of the only guy really that most people would say is he definitely deserves to go in the first round. Of course, some team's going to fall in love with a player. Maybe they trade up for a guy, whatever. but like it feels like the Kenny Pickett year, right? Where there was like, maybe there's a guy, maybe there's two guys, but really it's like Mendoza and then just a group behind him. And a lot of these guys, Garrett Nussmeier, Carson Beck, Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, like they've all really been disappointing these last year and a half in college. Whereas like previously this class was like, oh, this is a nice quarterback class. Everybody was super excited about this. Then you had some guys go back to college because of NIL. And so all that to say is the quarterback class is super weak this year. You're going to see that reflected in mock drafts. Maybe you'll have one or two guys in there in the NFL circles, and then that's going to have a big effect on superflex drafts. Whereas like when we have some of these years where there's 2 or 3 or even 4 quarterbacks in the first round of the NFL draft, it makes the second round of your rookie drafts in superflex pretty valuable because there's going to be skill guys that get pushed down. This year, I don't see that being the case. It's just a pretty weak class behind Mendoza.
Yeah, I'm looking right now of all the teams where I'm looking at their week 1 starter for 2026, and I have a question mark next to them, either for injury purposes like the Falcons. It's like, you'd think it would be Penix, but who knows what they do with Cousins? Could they bring in a veteran? They don't know what they're doing. But then I look around the league, and it's like the Browns, big question mark. The Colts, week 1, question mark of who that person is. The Raiders, probably Mendoza. The Dolphins are a question mark. The Jets are an eternal question mark. The Steelers are a question mark. Any of those settings, Jason, that you would be excited about for a rookie quarterback?
Not really.
That's the problem.
I mean, yeah, there's a bad combination of no huge top-end quarterback talent, and all of the jobs are not that desirable. I mean, I would have said the Dolphins, with Mike McDaniel there. He had Tua leading the league in passing yardage, and you had obviously Waddle and Achane, but now I'm not sure how valuable that job is from a fantasy football perspective or not for an incoming quarterback. I'm never going to trust a Jet. It's
Poor
it's
Jets
not good.
fans. Poor Jets fans.
I know the rumor of like Dante Moore was supposed to be one of the quarterbacks in this class. It was 2 quarterback draft class, and the rumor was he went back to Oregon because he didn't want to go to the Jets. I don't think that's true. I think the more likely outcome is he was told he wouldn't be a top 2 pick. Because if you're a top 2 pick, you're literally. I know he's going back and he's getting NIL money, getting like $4 million or something like that. But if you're a top 2 pick, you're signing a $50+ million fully guaranteed deal. Browns, Jets, Cardinals, you take it. I'm guessing that his team was told he wouldn't be that high of a pick. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be a great year for outlier, surprising quarterback play. However, I don't know that we would have looked and said, I mean, who had coming into this past season a much worse wide receiver core than the Saints? You had Chris Olave that you weren't sure if he's going to be able to play a full season with his concussion history, and no one. I mean, right before the season, they traded for Vele, and
Hey, you put some respect on Rashid Shaheed.
Okay, they had who was probably there. It felt like, oh man, this might be your best wide receiver going in, but that wasn't like a coveted spot. And Tyler Shuck came in, and so if a guy can surprise and be good, I know Trinidad
Chambliss.
whatever, Chambliss. If he is in the draft this year, which currently is because he was denied eligibility to go back for a 17th year of playing college football. He's fighting that though due to injuries and other things.
He's a TBD.
So he's a TBD, but I know Andy likes what he's seen from Trinidad. So maybe that type of a player can come in and surprise and exceed expectations in one of these bad situations. But the 30,000-foot view right now is it's a bad year for quarterbacks, bad spots for quarterbacks. I will be shocked, not just surprised, if there is a true emergence.
Yeah, Chambliss is an interesting name when you add in the rushing upside. Another name that's at the Senior Bowl right now that I just need to throw out there is Talon Green. He was at Arkansas, and they were terrible. They lost their last 10 games. But 6'6", 229, so he's just a freak athlete. He ran for almost 800 yards this past year. He has the rushing upside if a team's like, oh, he's interesting, let's make him a project on day 3. day 2. He's a name that I just want people to know, Taylor Green from Arkansas. But
I cannot
overall,
wait to pick him up off
the
waivers.
new Logan Thomas.
there you go.
You guys remember Logan Thomas?
Who was it?
Or is that just me as a Cardinals
No, I
fan?
remember him.
I remember him in
We
college,
drafted-
Virginia Tech.
Just the amazing monster of a man who was like, man, the skills that he's 6'6", 500 pounds, we could throw the ball through a mountain, not over it. And then it's like, he finished his career at tight end, which I thought he played well
He was fine.
at tight end.
He had a couple good years.
Dude, Taylor Green profiles a lot like the type of guy where you're like, I don't know if this is going to work in the NFL, but if he gets some starts, I'm going to play him in fantasy because he will run, right? And that's what you're bringing up is just a name to just circle, kind of see what happens over the spring. He's got the fantasy-friendly skill set that we care about.
Yes. All right, let's move to running back, where I was looking at the last couple of years. We've talked in the past about, there's that year it was like, is it CEH or Jonathan Taylor you should take in your rookie drafts? And it was like, the whole time we're like, oh, it's Taylor. He's got the production profiles, got everything else. Then it flip-flops in the NFL draft, and you're like, oh no, what should I do? So those are the kind of conversations I want to bring up, not to say like, gotcha, but just that informs our opinion so much of, here's the production profile of a player. Here's where they go in the NFL draft. Here's the opportunity with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes said he wants this player. And we have the hindsight benefit of looking back, but those are the things that ebb and flow over the next 3 to 4 months.
Man, that one will be an all-timer. I mean, it was really crazy. I know some people were extremely high on CEH coming in, from that LSU team that scored a bajillion points, and the production profile that Clyde had was outstanding. I didn't like him. So this was really tough on me. Like, he was my running back 6 before the NFL draft. And I remember that, and Jonathan Taylor was my easy running back 1. And then he doesn't get drafted in the first round and falls. And then, we just saw Kareem Hunt, who was a dominator for this offense, who didn't have the draft capital of a first round back, didn't have the pedigree of Clyde. And it was like, okay, I've got to change my opinion. And I really wish I didn't because man, talk about an all-time whiff. Could you just imagine how good the Chiefs would have been over that time? Obviously they won multiple Super Bowls, were in every Super Bowl. It's not like they were really struggling, but just add Jonathan Taylor to that team. That would have been unfair. And they had that chance, and they took a running back, and they just got the wrong one. Crazy.
It's wild. 2023, I don't know if you guys remember this, Jahmyr Gibbs, for most of the process, was seen as he'll go in the second round. He'll go in the late second round. And then, he might end up being...
Sneak into the first.
That was like the report. The week leading up to the draft, I remember Peter Schrager was saying that like he's probably going to be a first-round pick. And Betz, you and I on the DFS and betting show, we took him to go in the first round. We definitely did not take him to go 12th overall, which is where he ended up. Now, that's not normal. Usually you don't get that much steam on a running back, but it was interesting to see that. And then last year,
Schrager's so awesome. I feel like this is the most disrespected. Not that he's like disrespected. People love Peter Schrager. He's awesome. But he doesn't get the respect he deserves. He is genuinely plugged in. That guy is awesome. What he says, you should listen to. He's amazing. I couldn't give enough compliments to Peter Schrager.
Yeah, there's a certain point where what he says in his mock, you kind of go, okay, it's going to look very, very similar to what, like, especially in late April. So Peter Schrager's definitely a name.
But I feel like oftentimes, like, what he says is mocked because he says things that seem so wildly different. And it's like, oh, come on.
Well, he does his mock drafts.
Oh, come on, like
off of what he's hearing instead of what he would do.
Yes.
So especially as like whenever the first one comes out, there's always like a couple head scratches where you're like, wait a minute, and then like a week or two will go by and you'll start to see other mock drafts, and then that same guy that you were like, hold on now, is actually in all the other mock drafts, and so like he kind of starts to get things going in that way. But yeah, his last like one or two that kind of lead right up, they're generally pretty accurate. And yeah, he does have a lot of plugged in information as far as his sources go. So he always drops a fun nugget or two, like the week or two up to the NFL draft. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, make sure you're following him. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, and then everybody copies off his paper. at the very end of the process.
Yeah.
Last year, I found this little fun nugget. RJ Harvey in January was going 178th overall on big boards. He ended up going 60th overall to the Broncos. So there was some fun movement there. I remember profiling him. We had some split opinions of what he could be in the NFL, but Sean Payton obviously had an idea of how he could work in a committee and then take over. So this year's class has one player in the top 50 currently. It's Jeremiah Love.
Running back.
That's it.
Yep.
I just know, we've been playing Dynasty long enough that there will be names. There will be 2 or 3 of these names that will enter the conversation of being in the first round of rookie drafts just because everybody needs running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still is that a cautionary tale though? Because we've done this for years and we kind of understand that your team needs a running back, but the NFL doesn't need the running back the same way.
For sure. I mean, you can't make that mistake year after year after year after year, pushing lower drafted running backs in the NFL, lower NFL draft capital up into your rookie first round over wide receivers just simply because of your team need. Because I promise what your fantasy roster doesn't need is a worthless pick. And so it might need a running back, but it doesn't need a worthless running back. It would benefit from having a hit on a wide receiver. Maybe you don't need one. Maybe it doesn't crack your roster. But I promise if he is good and is a valuable fantasy asset, your fantasy team will be better than if you – I mean, my cautionary tale was always Trey Sermon. I think I took Trey Sermon over, I want to say Jalen Waddle in that draft. Yeah, and that was 100% what we're talking about here. It was my team needed a running back so incredibly desperately, and I was chock full of wide receivers. And so I did that exact mistake, and you got to learn from those things. It ended up working out. My 3rd round pick that year ended up if I had just replaced Trey Sermon and I think it was Elijah Missile, that it would have felt a lot better. But yeah, the Trey Sermon first round whiff, it feels bad. And this year is the year to be don't do it. I mean, I'm sure that we're going to fall in love with some of these guys, and there will be some of these guys who are second-round picks. A handful of them will go in the second round, and they'll be valuable for fantasy. But it's really those day 3 picks that, because it's a weaker draft class at running back, presumably at this point, TBD, then, yeah, you'll get to pick 9, 10, 11, 12, around there of your first round. And you're going to see day 3 running backs being drafted over day 2 wide receivers. And just be really sure of yourself and your scouting if you do that.
Don't mess it up.
Well, it's like Betz said, if you believe in someone and you go, this guy fell, your Cam Scatterbo fell to the 4th round, and you're like, no, I believe in him, and you want to take him over a guy, that's fine. Do that. Just make sure you're really, really bullish on him. Just not one of those the situation could work out, and so I need a running back. I'm going to use that as a tiebreaker. That's not a tiebreaker if you're talking about a second-round wide receiver versus a 4th-round running back.
Yeah, and just for context to kind of hammer this point home, and we'll highlight some of the wide receiver names here too. There's currently 12 wide receivers being mocked inside the top 75 picks on mock draft database as of this week. There are currently 2 running backs inside of the top 75 in that same metric, if you will. One of those is Jeremiah Love, who's definitely going in the first round. So it's a better wide receiver class, I would say, relative to the running back position, which is kind of what you're saying, where it's it might feel good to take a shot on day 3 back here, but the NFL is telling us it's not a highly coveted running back class.
Yeah, I mean, what that says to me is maybe if you have a good team, right? So you're picking at 9 through 12, you're one of the best 3 or 4 teams in your league, and you need a running back. That's your weakness. And you can pretty much be sure that at that pick, you're not going to get a difference-making running back. Maybe use that capital to trade for an existing veteran running back in your league versus drafting, an under NFL drafted running back with point. That first rounder.
Yeah, we talked last week about some running backs, like Baishal Tutin was a name that we said, if you're going to trade for him now. It's risky because they might bring back ETN, but this is a player that you're looking at how he was used as metrics and say, oh, he's successful in his role, where your late second round pick, who knows what that running back's going to be. The names I did want to highlight really quickly, Jonah Coleman is the other running back out of Washington that Betz mentioned that's going in the top 75. And Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska. Those two have the pass catching profile, which we'll highlight on an entire episode talking about these players. But Emmett Johnson led this class with 46 receptions. He's a name that I wrote down, and then he's the one that I said, I think Mike is going to like him. So,
oh yeah, so you wrote down who you're predicting.
I literally wrote
Mike
note
says.
to self.
Okay,
Mike is going to like Emmett Johnson.
You know his type.
We'll
see. Yeah.
Been around the block. My goal.
We've done this for a while at this point.
Yeah, my goal is to get in y'all's mind and think, well, how would Jason think about this player?
Yeah.
So
Do you have a note on me yet? Not yet.
His last name has to be Johnson. So
right.
Emmett Johnson.
It's got to be a K. Johnson.
Is going to be those players. But yeah, there's some names like a couple years ago. I remember profiling Bucky Irving.
I'm not kidding. The next year that there is a K. Johnson that is like a player that matters, I am going to, like, at this time of year before I scout them, I'm going to be petrified. I'm going to put on the tape and be like, please hate this guy.
Please be terrible at this.
Please hate this guy. It's my weakness. It's K. Johnson's.
It's just a K. Johnson guy.
Goodness.
But I was thinking back to our conversation about Bucky Irving, where it was like, he's small. Is this really going to work? But between the tackles, it's like, this is a good running back at Oregon. And there might be a player like that where it's like the measurables, he's not going to measure very big. Same thing with James Cook a couple years ago. It's like, this dude isn't big, but between the tackles, he's going to work. So when we do our film work, I'm interested to find out players like that. I'm interested to hear Betz's take on the Penn State running backs, which before the season were kind of seen as, locked in day 2 picks. Now it's like, okay, what are they? Notre Dame, we have Jeremiah Love. We also have his teammate, Jadarian Price. It's an interesting conversation to say that there are 2 sets of teammates in this class that make up 4 of the top 6. Like that's just not that normal.
No, certainly not.
So we'll talk about all those guys when we have an entire episode on running backs. But let's take a quick break and we'll talk wide receivers. All right, let's talk about wide receivers. I went back last year and looked at who are the top 5 wide receivers at this point in the process, okay? Tedder McMillan was kind of seen as he's a top 10 guy no matter what, but you remember there was that moment where a video came out and he's like, I don't really watch a ton of NFL film.
Yeah.
And the question was actually like posed to him, the way that he answered is like, I don't watch the NFL that much. And people thought, this guy doesn't care at all.
It looked like he doesn't watch any film.
Yes.
That's what it seemed like. Like I have no work ethic and I don't watch film. It's taken out of context, but it makes sense that he didn't really pay attention to the NFL that much because he was focused on, I'll bet he pays attention to the NFL now.
Yeah.
as a NFL player.
Luther Burden was the 14th overall player, and then he ended up dropping into the second round. So that one's kind of interesting. Ibuka's kind of held steady the whole process. Is right there in the first round. Now, none of us put together the combination with the Buccaneers, but like Betz kind of brought up earlier, like sometimes NFL teams are not just thinking of what do I need for fantasy. In fact, they're rarely thinking about it. They're thinking who's the best player on the board. So in all the mock drafts, nobody was mocking Ibuka because they have enough wide receivers over there. They just re-signed Chris Godwin, and yet that's where things change. The interesting names though were Isaiah Bond was 42nd overall. Do you guys remember where he ended up going in the draft?
He went undrafted,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Undrafted.
Yeah.
Now his was
That was because of his off the field issues.
Yeah, legal stuff.
But it's also interesting, right after this is where we kind of saw the Matthew Golden rise. And I want to ask this question to you guys. Do you think that mock drafters in this period, right at Betz, I could hear that nice swig.
Yeah, drink right into your microphone, please.
I've got a little cold going on. I'm thirsty.
That was like almost like its own sound effect track. It was like a boink.
Should I do it
The
again?
listeners took that swig with you. That's what it
I don't
sounded
think
like.
you could. I want
try.
to see if you can. Yeah, see if you can do that again.
There,
All right, it was pretty
Nailed
good.
it.
not bad. My question, after I was rudely interrupted, is the players that are exposed on this national level for the college football playoffs. So Indiana had this run, Miami had this run this year. you kind of look at where they were going in December and then where they're going a month later, and all of them, and I mean all of them, including like Roman Hemby, their running back out of Indiana, all of them skyrocket in ADP, in mock drafts. That's not a bad thing. We get more film on these players. We also get to just look at the Indiana game and say like, okay, we get some really intense film. We're usually on a Saturday. There's 50 games going on. You never can look at just one player at a time. Do you guys feel like that's a bad part of the process, that like these players are hyped up too much, or is that just that's what's going to happen because they're the only players on TV right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's a bad part of the process if it is a drastic shift. There's a difference between getting more film on someone and affirming what was previously thought or challenging what was previously thought to some degree. I think that when there is a breakout performance on the biggest stage, it gets overblown, and it gets overblown in a way where it's, well, if that player can step up in the biggest moments, he's a gamer.
That's a good
point. So
point.
it's actually even better that it's happening now, and that's how I know Matthew Golden's going to be so good. Did you see his one great game against ASU in the national playoffs? Like, he wasn't doing that on a regular basis, and the whole world saw it, and that exploded his perception. And I think that those are the mistakes that are made this time of year. Personally,
I agree, and I think it's really important for what we're trying to do, and if you're playing Dynasty, what you're trying to do is really you want to understand the season that the player just had, but also like their entire journey to get to like this point. Like, did this come out of nowhere? And if so, that can be a yellow to red flag. Was it injury related that the player's production fell off? Did they have a quarterback issue? Like we talked about that a lot last year with Luther Burden, where like he was used just so differently because the quarterback was terrible, and all those sort of things. I do really think a lot of this stuff that is so recent can get you in trouble a lot. Like we see it kind of year over year, and I'm not trying to pick on like certain guys in this class this year, but like CJ Daniels, like I don't know, seems not that appealing of a player to target in fantasy and Dynasty. I'm not saying he's going to be a top guy in this class, but like he's on the rise because Miami just went on a run, like you're saying, in the college football playoffs. So yeah, I really would caution everybody about zooming out as well on these guys and making sure you're not just looking at kind of the last month of the season.
Yeah, the Indiana wide receivers, Elijah Sarrett and Omar Cooper Jr., are now both top 75 picks, where if we were having this conversation a month ago or 2 months ago, it does look a little different, but there is a good mix of wide receivers. That would be my main point, is there's a quality mix of about 5 to 6 wide receivers that I think will end up in that first round or fringe first round status, which is great for fantasy. So we mentioned earlier, if you have a top 6 pick, if you have a top 7 pick, you should feel really, really good about having a wide receiver that can kind of replenish with some young players. So at the top, Jordan Tyson of Arizona State has kind of been the dude for a while as a top 15 pick. I know he's had some injury issues. Andy really likes him a lot. So
yeah, I do as well.
So him, Carnell Tate out of Ohio State is probably going to end up being a top 15 pick as well. Another Ohio State wide receiver, even though he wasn't even the most famous wide receiver on his own team this year. That's Jeremiah Smith.
I mean, it feels like I feel like we say that every single time.
Because of Jeremiah.
Every single time anyone drafted, he's no longer the most famous guy. Buka wasn't. All these guys, it's, for a while it was well, Jackson Smith and Jigba is the dude there. It wasn't Garrett Wilson. It wasn't Chris Olave, even though they're great and they're being drafted. It was that. Now it's not. It wasn't JSN. It's the next guy. It's always the guy who's not yet going to the NFL that you just got to wait on. And I mean, it's impressive and it's amazing. And what's crazy is it could be true.
Yes.
Could be. Before we move on from the Ohio State thing, I just want to highlight one important fact for your rookie drafts next year. Do not get lost in the frustration of what is about to happen with Jeremiah Smith, because Arthur Smith is now the offensive coordinator at Ohio State.
Oh, yes.
So when the production comes down this year and you're seeing the third string tight end get targets over Jeremiah Smith, Zoom out. Remember
Yes.
the talent is there. Arthur, don't ruin this, buddy.
This is Shane Waldron JSN, is what you're telling me? Is that when you watch JSN with Shane Waldron in the NFL, it's like, he's not that good. This is brilliant analysis.
I cannot believe he got hired for that job.
I love it. I forgot. I didn't think about the implications of still being able to ruin things for fantasy. When he took the college job, I'm like, yes,
He can't hurt us.
We're free. He can't hurt us
He's just
anymore.
hurting us in
Oh, he
Dynasty
still
now.
can.
He's moving on. Like
He's helping us. He's hurting others.
he's giving the discount, but he's
We've been forewarned by Betz here that we'll scoop up the discount on a poor season.
one of the things we usually talk about is a player's career yards per out run. So here's what they did over the course of their college career, and you compare it to different. But like, it's a great example, Betz, of here's what he did before Arthur Smith showed up. Here's what it looks like there. You have to contextualize all these players, especially nowadays, where there's so many different transfers, so many different changes in the coaching staffs. But the other names, Mekhi Lemon, who I wish I had a meter in front of me that just showed me every time someone compares him to Amon-Ra St. Brown, because it will happen a billion times over the next year. So just wait on that. Denzel Boston, who is huge, and yet he's the type of player that I usually have somewhat of a pause with.
So I get that. A lot of times these really large, especially the 6'4" plus wide receivers, they don't often pan out. I mean, obviously, Drake London, Mike Evans, there are hits, and when they hit, they're fantastic, which is why you go so strong at them. But there's a lot of people who've been overdrafted because of that perceived size. However, since we're talking size real quick, I love this draft class without scouting through them individually yet, based on size. The last few years, we've talked about it ad nauseum for several of these draft classes, all the wide receivers coming in at 175, 165, the 180, all these top end wide receivers who are the smaller jitterbugs, and maybe that's okay for this modern NFL, and the Tank Dells can succeed. They're not going to, just get injured. And this year, you look at the list, it's 195 pounds, 200 pounds, 195, 209, 190, 220, 180, 209, 200, 204, 200, 201. I want my wide receivers right around there. I want them right around 200 pounds. And so I love that personally. This feels like such a yin to the yang of last year, where last year it really was a weaker wide receiver draft class. It wasn't super top heavy. The running backs were the prize. And then this year it feels like the exact inverse, where you've got the one guy at running back, and then you'll have some guys sneak in the way that Mecca Ibuka and some of these guys snuck in, and it felt a little bit more valuable at wide receiver. But it just fits so perfect this year, where the top end talents at wide receiver.
The variety, I think, is what I like best. Like last year with running back, it was like you have Genty, who's a workhorse. You have Hampton, who can break tackles. You have Travion, who in space can do all this stuff. Like we had a kind of a nice little assortment of running back types that could work in different systems. I feel like we're in the same spot with wide receiver, where it's like there are slot wide receivers who can step in the NFL right now and just completely bust zone coverage. There's players that can separate. So one of my favorites early in the process is Casey Concepcion, which is my favorite way to say it. Out of Texas. Concepcion. Out of Texas A&M. Love him. I love him so far. And then you have a bunch of other players that are currently being mocked inside the top 75. That's like, okay, there's some deep threats. There's just lots of different names. Jacoby Lane out of USC is also huge, 6'4". He just measured at the Senior Bowl. So it's a nice mix for us, especially if you're trying to replenish wide receivers.
Agreed.
Which a lot of teams are. When you look at combining this year's draft class with this year's free agents, these guys will be pushed even higher in the NFL draft than what we are expecting right now. Teams that are wide receiver needy, they can't go out and sign just about anybody. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head who the top wide receivers are, but I looked at the list recently, and it was
I'm looking right now.
Pickens.
Yuck and worse. George Pickens, if he's not franchised. Right? Like, he might not hit the market. Okay, so let's take him off.
Mike Evans.
And it's
Christian Kirk.
Mike Evans, but he's not really a free agent. If he keeps playing football,
Debo.
Everyone assumes he's going to be a Buccaneer.
Alec Pierce is going to make a lot of money.
Older. Yeah, Alec Pierce is like the belle of the ball. Alec Pierce, he's a good wide receiver. But this is not like, oh, the number one free agent everyone's been waiting to hit the market. Alec Pierce.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that means more draft capital goes to these wide receivers. The GMs around the league are going to be looking to the draft to fix their wide receiver ails.
And what it costs to sign a guy in free agency, like Tutu Atwell signed for $10 million last year. Like what it actually costs to sign a top tier free agent wide receiver is bananas these days. So, like you said, from a GM perspective, from a cost, planning perspective, getting these guys on a rookie deal, if they can hit for you, it's just so valuable. So that's a great point. I think we are going to see these wide receivers get pushed up quite a bit.
Yeah, the Jaguars threw $10 million at Diami Brown because of what he did against Liam Cohen in the playoffs, and then dude never really saw the field, which is hilarious. So a lot of names, a lot of interesting names. Zachariah Branch out of Georgia is a gadgety player, so his role is going to be interesting. We will have at least 2 episodes on the wide receivers, just knowing how many there are to profile. Those should be really, really good. And then I feel so sad ending the episode this way, but this is kind of how it is in the Dynasty streets. There's one tight end, Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. That's kind of it right now. That's the only one inside the top 75. There will probably be a couple of guys that end up in the day 2 conversation. Like last year, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, Elijah Arroyo all ended up being in the second round. But for fantasy, that's the thing we care about. It's pretty bare.
The truth is, for fantasy, there aren't very many tight ends that really matter. And therefore, that's like when you look at all tight ends in all of fantasy that are veterans, there's still not that many that really matter. And that's over the last 10 years of draft classes. So every draft class is pretty much you're not really getting a special tight end, or you get one. This last year we got 2, 3 with Fannin. This was a great year for tight ends. This year is going to be very mild.
And I also think, too, real quick on the tight end standpoint, from an NFL draft capital standpoint, obviously we care about it to some degree at tight end. It's not always as correlated as it is with running back, wide receiver, and quarterback, because the NFL sometimes will draft these guys for a specific need in an offense. Are they a blocker? Can they fit in 2 tight end sets? Do they envision them as like a complete tight end that can play and block and do all that stuff that, yeah, it's great to go on the field, but what we care about is this athleticism, the receiving metrics, stuff like that. So sometimes you'll see guys get pushed up in the NFL draft, even though for us in fantasy, it doesn't always correlate.
That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you check out all the production profiles, which will be available for all these players. So we're diving into those right now. You will have them available to you on Super Bowl Sunday when we get to give the early release of the UDK Plus, the Dynasty Pass. That's right around the corner. So
yeah, just you can go to footclan.com. Just get on the ultimate tier, and you will always have access to every tool we have, including every Dynasty thing. Literally, if you're just in the ultimate tier at footclan.com, you'll have unlimited access to everything we basically ever make ever.
Next week, we will be talking production profiles, our first reactions to some of these players, and we'll probably find out who Mike's guy is next week. So, talk again next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.